Hey folks, welcome to Training Tuesday for Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. Our learner this week is Vagonbrei, and you're only going to get to see Vagonbrei. I'm showing you 2 different training dates, 2 weeks apart, and several sessions per each training date. So this is session 1, and this is repetition 1. He had already been out exploring and was in this tunnel that's created when you stack 2 showcase cages enclosures on top of each other. There's a tunnel where the light bar goes in the front, and the snakes all love to hang out in there. So I asked him to target out of the tunnel, which he immediately did. That was no problem whatsoever. And I thought it would be easiest for him to come across this other terrarium to where I wanted him to ultimately end up if he went over that grass, because it would be more grippy for him. But he didn't want to go over the grass, so I readjusted, and he seemed to want to go over the plastic, so I let him do that. And it was against his own better judgment that he chose that route instead of the route that I chose for him, because he fell. Vagonbrei is a very advanced learner. He's been with me a long time. This is absolutely not a beginning learner. He was not really fazed by this. I wasn't really fazed by this because I know this snake so well. And I just modified my criteria and changed my training plan for this session from having him target out of the hiding place he was in and over that enrichment item to a flat area on the other side, to targeting him through this dog crate door while he was already on the floor. So now I just want him to target through the bars of the dog crate. I want him to interact and pause at the target, and then I'm going to deliver reinforcement for him. And he does just fine. We don't have any problem with this. So that was repetition 1 during the first session. Now, this is still the first session, same day, repetition 2. So now he's kind of on that floor, kind of hanging on this dog crate door. And I thought I would have him target directly from where he was over to the flat surface. So my goal during this whole session was to get him to go onto this flat surface. And remember, he's an advanced learner. So now I'm really challenging him to stay focused, to exhibit impulse control for longer targeting sessions, and to follow the target to various areas. In other words, generalize the targeting behavior so that he's able to perform this targeting behavior no matter where he's at. And sometimes he may have to target on a flat surface like an exam table. So here I made a note that if this was a beginning learner, I would have reinforced right there, or even probably an intermediate learner, because he's been going at this a long time now, and I don't want to cause frustration. And I want to make sure that he's reinforced for the amount of focus that he's showing and engagement with the target. And he's an advanced learner, so we've done things that are more challenging than this, but it didn't seem like he felt comfortable traversing that just empty space between the dog kennel door and the bench. Also, the dog kennel door moves, so I decided to redirect him up onto the table because I felt like he would be more comfortable climbing, and he was. So this is just an example of me modifying my training plan during the session, which I've pretty much had to do since the beginning because I didn't factor into my training plan him falling and ending up on the floor. And so I'm just kind of playing this by ear, basing my behavior on his behavior. So he's more comfortable climbing, so I target him up, and there's just way too much going on here for me to readjust the camera angle. So I just had to leave the tripod and the camera where it was. I have tongs in my left hand. I do not have the reinforcement in my left hand yet. The food is in a bowl on a table to my left. All I have is the tongs at this point. And then at some point when I feel like I'm getting close to when I want to reinforce him, I get the reinforcer on the tongs. But there you saw the empty tongs I'm using to push the door a little bit to the right just to get him a little bit closer to the bench, which is where I ultimately want him. And that didn't faze him either. over the years of working with him, he's used to being touched and he's used to his body being moved around during a training session and also while he's eating. So now we get closer to my goal, which is the bench. But I'm also assessing his tail here. I'm not just looking at his head. I'm watching for his tail to just wrap around that dog kennel and anchor onto those bars, because if he does that, then I don't think he would progress any further. And while he is using his tail to hang on, he's not wrapping it and anchoring, and his whole body is still moving. And so that's good. That's why I continue, and I ask him to follow the target further and further. And now we're almost to that flat surface, and he's been doing this for so long. I felt like my instinct told me this was a good time to reinforce him. We've made it at least with the front third of his body to the flat surface. Notice I hang on to the rat. I don't let go of it, or the jumbo mouse, whatever that was, because I don't want him to coil back and fall off the bench. So I held on to the rat and then helped him over to the bench the rest of the way. This session is 2 weeks later. He had already spent some time out exercising. So he spent some time loose exercising, free roaming, and he ended up on a repurposed giant bird perch that we have. And then I picked him up and moved him into this exercise tent where he spent, I don't know how long, an hour or two roaming around this exercise tent. And then I started our training session. So I'm asking him initially to target out of the exercise tent and up, but he wanted to target out of the exercise tent and flat to get over to the exercise station. And I was fine with that. So I adjust the camera angle so you guys can all see. And then I re-engage him with the target. You would not do this with a beginning learner. You would not take the target away and then re-engage. You always want to reinforce that target with the beginning learner. And you always want to reinforce the target during every session, even with an advanced learner. However, I was able to pause for a second and re-engage because he knows what's happening. He's done this so many times. So he chose his route and he wanted to come across to the activity station flat, and that's fine. So I just adjust my criteria where I was initially going to ask him to target up onto that plastic tub. Now I'm asking him to target through these metal horseshoes. And this is just for practice. This is just to teach him, yes, you can target anywhere, in any direction, anytime. So we're teaching him to generalize this behavior. He does a little snap at the target here. I'm not really sure why he did that, unless he just missed his ReptiLink. So he takes the ReptiLink, he eats the ReptiLink, no problem. I leave him there until I start seeing him moving around again, and then I start repetition number 2. So he started moving towards the floor. I don't like them to get on the floor, so I wanted him to move up and over this net and back towards the scale. My ultimate goal was to get him back towards the scale. I thought it would be easiest for him if he went over the net because it's grippy, it's got a wide surface, and he said, no, I don't want to go over the net. I'm going to go under the net and over the plastic TARDIS. If you don't know what a TARDIS is, then you obviously have not been watching Doctor Who. So he chooses not to go over the net, which is what I thought would be easier for him. He knows ultimately where I want him to be. He even lost sight of the target. And so I think this is really good evidence for object permanence, because even though for a few seconds he wasn't even looking at the target, he couldn't even possibly have seen the target when I had it directly above that net, he still went underneath the net to get to the other side where he assumed the target was going to be. And I reinforced him for that because he went towards the scale, he made it to the other side of that TARDIS, and I reinforced him. I thought I would get some really cool footage of him eating a ReptiLink for you, but he wasn't really cooperating and he kept hiding his face from me.